This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Claudio. I'm your host for today, and I'm the head of diversity of male childcare and teaching jobs. This podcast episode is being made in partnership with us. And today I couldn't be any more excited to have Mattie Winfield with us. Hi, Mattie. How are you?
Hi, Claudia. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing today?
Very good, very good. Thank you very much. Today's episode is going to be about the challenges, the career challenges that male educators experience in early childhood education. And obviously, I've got Mattie here, who I'm very honored to have on this episode. Mattie comes from a different industry. He has transitioned from an industry that's very different to childcare and education. And and he has recently become a room leader as well within his setting. So, Mattie, would you please give us a bit of an overview of where you've come from and what you're doing?
Sure, absolutely. So a little bit about my background. I studied drama and creative writing at university. Those were sort of my passions and interests through school. But then, like many people graduating out of education, you look around, you can't find relevant career directions for the education that you've been in. I think that's a very communal experience. So I went and looked at other passions that I had and other interests, and I wound out in chefing. It was it was a long and sprawling and interesting career that I had within that industry. Started out at the very beginning, flipping burgers. I worked with a lot of big companies, Wagamama for a long time. Did restaurant openings teams where we'd go around opening new restaurants. Worked my way, sort of up through the ranks to head chef. Ended up having a place of my own, a kitchen in Bristol, which had some very good reviews and things like that. It's around about 9 years, the duration that I spent in there. There were some good times in that, but it had a lot of challenges as an industry as well. A lot of ones people will probably be familiar with, even if it's not a career that they've worked in. Hospitality is long hours. It can be quite physically grueling and challenging work, quite antisocial hours as well, that didn't necessarily marry up with the aspirations I had within my social life and within my broader family life as well. So having sort of reached somewhat of a modest pinnacle within the industry, I decided that I was ready for a change. I wanted a different atmosphere, a different structure, a different schedule to my life. And like those who want to change career paths, I cast quite a broad net. Wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to go next. So I started speaking to friends, to colleagues, to all sorts of different people to gather what they did, where they came from. And it just so happened a very good friend of mine called Jordan was an accountant, in fact, who worked for a chain of nurseries. And he recommended me, based on personality type, far more than anything else, to go and have an interview with one of his nurseries. He said he could have a word with the manager there, recommend me. So I went in, and that was the big broad change for me.
Wow, wow, the power of recommendations, isn't it? It's incredible.
Yes,
And
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
so interesting to see how you've switched from such a different industry as well, the chefing industry. I was reading at some of the statistics that you've shared in your article about the fact that you've experienced that the previous industry you were in was predominantly a male industry. You were talking about an 80 to 95% of the staff that you were working with were male, and obviously, switching to the childcare and education industry where that's completely reversed to a 2 to 3%. It must have been quite an interesting experience. How did you navigate that? And what were your thoughts when you've gone through that?
I won't lie. I think part of my thinking when I interviewed in childcare, I didn't know a lot about the industry as a whole. As I say, I came in very green and very new into early years. But based on the strength of the interview I had alone, some sort of colloquial anecdotal evidence from people that I spoke to, I knew it would be a more female-centered industry. And I think at the time where I made that change, was quite ready to see another side of that and another way of working. Having now seen both sides, having worked in both sides of the industry, I think there are inherent positives and difficulties to both. I think my overall conclusion that I would draw would be that a 50-50 split or there and thereabouts equity between the genders would probably be the ideal for a workplace situation. But I think in terms of what I was looking to get away from when I was leaving chefing, things in a very, very masculine environment are, and this is both a strength and a detriment, very direct. People don't hold on to their feelings very much at all. And that helps at times mean that there aren't stagnant atmospheres in places because issues are addressed as they come up. But it can also be in quite an aggressive and forthright way. There, rumors and things that you will have heard before. You do get a degree of locker room talk, which can at times, challenge attitudes, positive attitudes that I had about sex, gender, race, these sort of things. You wouldn't always hear the most, dynamically positive thinking in a lot of kitchen environments. Those sort of attitudes I found challenging. And, I was probably getting to a point, as we all do for a long time in a career, where we were just tired of the same sort of stereotypes reappearing even though you might change a job or a position. I'd worked in a lot of different kitchens, multiple countries, and I was finding that you would see a lot of the same faces, if you see what I mean, a lot of the same attitudes, a lot of the same discussions, and I was ready for a clean break from that. So where I was coming into early years, I was very excited about the opportunity to sit and have very different discussions with colleagues, and work in an industry where a positive reinforcement is part of the necessity of the job. It's very important to people's mental health, but also to their ability to educate and develop children, that people display and role model positive attitudes. And I thought, if we're doing that as part of our work, that will surely bleed through and integrate into your life as a worker within that industry, as a member of a staff room, a team, and everything like that. So certainly, as I started, and I think it's always the case when you do something new, everything at the beginning is very exciting, and you see all of the good, and maybe don't realize as much some of the more difficult aspects that will creep in later on, as your eyes become a little bit wider. But certainly in that beginning, after the transition, I felt like I got a lot of what I was looking for. I had a very, very positive experience when I started in childcare. Still do, but it may be a broader tapestry now. But certainly starting out, I found that more aggressive, bullish nature of discussion, some of those more sort of badly stereotyped conversations, a lot of those negative aspects that I had felt dissipated overnight. They simply were not there when I arrived in early years, and that was a big thing to help me onboarding and help me feel, okay, I've made a positive decision here.
Wow, this is so inspiring to hear. And it totally resonates with my experience as well. Funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I participated in another podcast and I was asked a question: what makes you the proudest for being in early years? And one of the things I said was that the job in a nursery environment allows me to display my feelings freely without any repercussions of how I get perceived from broader society. And obviously out there are still so many negative stereotypes and around, toxic masculinity to this day. Every time I scroll my reels on Instagram, I come across so much negativity around, what a man should do, what a man shouldn't do, and differences between men and women, and it's so wrong. But being in a nursery environment really allows me to be who I am, and I get to be a big child again in the first place, which is so nice. Again, without any fear of judgment, because children don't judge you today. And then at the same time, I can teach children as well that, it's okay to display feelings regardless of your gender. And to me, like, it's such an important aspect. And I'm so glad to hear that you've experienced that coming in the sector. It's not, I had some hurdles during my first year in early years education, but over time, through a lot of self-reflection and and positive thinking, obviously I managed to overcome that, which shows the fact that I'm still here with a smile on my face. But you've said something really, really nice in your article that got me thinking a lot. And obviously you've been in the sector now for a few years, right? And you shared the fact that you're helping rewriting the curriculum verbiage in your setting, and your preschool room has become a center of excellence as a training facility as well for the broader group. Am I correct?
Yes, we are. We are becoming a centre of excellence at the moment. We've had those discussions about what our pathway looks like, set out an agenda and a plan over the next sort of 4 to 5 months to make everything ready. We've just in this stage completed a big turnover of the environment. Obviously, we talk a lot about enabling environments and positive environments, how we can develop learning through our environment. So I've been working with the team to talk about how we integrate ideas from the curriculum, from the sort of set pathways of the EYFS, the 7 developmental areas, and how we can start to integrate them not only into our practice but into our environments, into our everyday interactions. So yeah, we have 7:15 meetings when we come in the morning, where we can get together and discuss how we are going to help integrate those ideas, because I think, early years is a wonderful hub of ideas. And part of rewriting the curriculum is about taking, what can be for some people, I think, quite a dry doctrine, and translating that into practice. If you talk about something like a development of a fine motor skill, a parent might not connect with what that actually practically means for their child. So it's like a physical translation from the written word into an activity that helps develop that child, but also makes that child smile, makes that child feel at home, develops that child holistically across a number of different avenues. And I think in rewriting the curriculum, the phrase I often start with, I think one really important to me is, you don't realize how much of this you are already doing. This kind of integrated practice sort of comes naturally, but the more you read about it, bring in the experiences of other people, the better you can be at creating a holistic approach. So, any simple activity plan idea can bring in sort of multiple different strings and aspects. A good example I might use recently was we were looking a little bit at like fresh food and things like that in our environment. We were talking about our lunches, came from a simple discussion that the children brought up about a new lunch, new ingredients they hadn't seen before. So we were entering into a discussion with them at the lunchtime about where these things come from. I asked where their food came from. A lot of them said Tesco, which was very funny to me. But we developed the discussion and the ideas, talking about the life cycles of food. Then we created a craft. We made this shoebox, covered it with grass, poked some holes in it, and then got them to draw some little fruits and vegetables stick them on pegs, and then they could peg them in to the ground, planting them within this shoebox. Got a little watering can to water them, and across the breadth of this activity that was born out of a simple, innocent but happy discussion about their interest, about their love for the food that they were receiving. We had the opportunity to count out different seeds, integrating mathematics. We had the chance to get them to do some colouring for expressive art and design, obviously benefiting their understanding of the world, where we were planting natural resources, working on fine motor skills for physical development as they peg things in. And this I liked as a good example of where we can integrate the curriculum, because there was not a grand, dry plan written in text of this is what we will do today to benefit the child's learning. We took the interest, we took the excitement, we built and scaffolded their learning and knowledge around it, and created an activity that was memorable for them, that was quite beautiful, and that they've discussed ever since. And that, I think, is what we like when we talk about curriculum.
Wow, this is the magic of responsive planning at its finest, I would say. And I'm sure you'll probably be getting loads of listeners and viewers taking notes on what you've just said. And it must be so inspiring. Like, actually, to be a source of inspiration for other settings must be so rewarding and must have, I think, quite a huge impact on your job satisfaction. What, like, do you feel that for you to become an inspiration for other people has had an impact on your, let's say, productivity or even performance?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think role modeling in the first instance is a big, big part of the job, because it's something really, really important for the children. We need to think about our standards and practices, the way we talk, the way we integrate educational language into how we talk and things like that. So it gave me an opportunity, even starting out in early years, particularly when I started my educational journey, to do a bit of that self-reflection and to start to think about the mechanics of how I talk, about how I was dividing up time in my day between different, jobs that needed doing, the more physical stuff, physical care routines, resetting environments, things like that, and then how I was balancing that against childhood development, which is obviously the core idea of why we're there. Working between child-leds, adult-leds, lots of different things. It was a big rush of education and learning how to balance my time, to balance my ideas, and to feed off information from my colleagues and help with my colleagues. I think where I had gone through hospitality, I took on a number of different roles in my time there, starting as commie chef up through a team leader, a floor leader, a sous chef, senior sous chef, head chef. They have quite strict roles in those terms, where there's a very clear mandate of what your job involves and a very clear hierarchy that's known when you walk in the building. Certainly with one of the companies I worked with for a long time, we had color-coded hats, which was a clear indication to everyone: this is your role, these are your expectations. And whilst it didn't leave anyone miscomprehending what their expectations were, it created, quite, I think at times, quite a blocking hierarchy, where people felt like if that isn't in my role, if that isn't in my remit, then that's not my concern. Whereas with early years, everything felt so inclusive, whereby you could help and support each other because there is a shared vision and a shared understanding of what the role is. Everyone from the top of a company, COOs and CEOs, right the way down the line, are there to support childhood development, childhood understanding, and they share that love and passion of the kids. It's that one thing that sort of brings everybody into the space. Even when, like any other workplace, you work with people who get disillusioned at times. That's going to happen. That's life. No industry will escape that. But when I've been, speaking and interacting with people who become disillusioned, who are leaving either the job, the role, or even the industry, it's never about the children. ever, not once, not to one single person I've spoken to. So that is a grand unifier. So coming back to sort of what you've asked in terms of my level of personal satisfaction, I think early on, certainly as my journey began, I had a great satisfaction that we felt this unified goal, that if I wasn't sure what I should be doing within a moment within my role or how I should balance my time, not only could I have those discussions that felt quite free and easy with colleagues, with managers, but I could also reflect within myself, well, what is the real goal here? And I think in those moments where you might feel, oh, I've got a lot of paperwork on at this point, or, I've been trying to get that display board up for 2 days. There's, half a letter T hanging off and I just can't look at it anymore. Where we have those frustrations, returning to that key goal really helped my sense of satisfaction, because I would just take a breath and go, okay, what is more important, that they have had a really good day or that tea is hanging off the board? And that helped me to recenter. I think it's along the lines of advice I got from other people as well. Remember why you're here, remember what the core ideal is, and that feels as strong and resonant for me now in a different role, in a room leader role, as it ever did at the beginning. I have more responsibilities now for training the staff, certainly more, administrative work, paperwork, things like that. But again, when I feel those overwhelmed feelings, I have that ability to recenter. I think that's been really important for me, and I would certainly give that as a piece of advice to anyone else within the setting is, that is always going to be more important. How the child experiences that day, that they feel safe, warm, looked after, supported. If you're doing that, then all the rest of it will get there.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with an exciting announcement. The Voice of Early Childhood Conference is back again, and it will be held on 8th of February 2025. I'm really excited to share with you all the fantastic speakers and their talks. So first up, we have Matt Baller presenting the morning keynote on proactively supporting children's mental health. Then we have 3 workshops for you to choose from out of a choice of 9 different topics and a variety of speakers. So on the leadership strand, we have Yinka Ognusi, cultivating a critical approach, targeting social justice and anti-racism. We also have Claudio Cicera and Stuart Cloak, recruiting a diverse workforce and investing in staff retention. And we have Wendy Ratcliffe, what to expect on your inspection day. And then we have our practice and parents strand. We have Dr. Sue Allingham speaking on a neuroscientific lens on the learning environment. We also have Stephanie Warrender, early literacy through song drawing. And we have Olivia Corbin-Phillip, using stories to build confidence and improve RSC. We then have our final strand, which is practice focused. From Charmaine Leach, we've got Inclusive Beginnings, Nurturing Every Child with SEND. We have Jan Dubil, Creating Your Own Curriculum. And we have Dr. Mona Saka, Kayla Halls, and Dr. Sarah Benetti on big questions in the baby room. And then last but not least, we have Ben Kingston Hughes presenting our closing keynote all around the essential neuroscience of humor and laughter. So it's a packed agenda with lots of talks to choose from. So make sure that you grab your tickets. The link with full conference info is in this episode description. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think there's so much more that, needs to be said when it comes to self-reflection and really finding and unpicking what are the factors and what are the aspects of your job role that makes you the most motivated and boosts your performance and job satisfaction. And I think this is quite an eye-opener for leaders out there as well, to sort of help them identify what their members of staff satisfactions are, so that they can potentially boost productivity. Looking back in my practice, I remember, and this circles back to what I've mentioned earlier on about me experiencing some hurdles during my first year in early years. Through self-reflection, I ultimately came to the realization that I wasn't feeling appreciated during my first year working in early years. And it was only when I became a room leader and then following that, when I remember I had an Ofsted inspection and I was the subject of a joint observation between the Ofsted inspector and the nursery manager. And we ultimately managed to get an outstanding, which was fantastic. But following that, so at the time I was working for a group of around 90 nurseries, and following that episode, I was asked to go and visit other settings to help them prepare their environment, their practice for any offset inspection. And to me, probably that was like the peak of my job satisfaction when I was working at that in the nursery chain. So again, that shows, I think, the importance of, well, not the importance, but it is an eye opener to leaders that different people might be satisfied by different aspects of the job, and it's so important to get to know your members of staff as individuals and as people to sort of like make the most out of their practice. I think, everything you've shared is so inspiring, Mattie, and I'm sure, there are a lot of educators out there that will resonate with what you've said. Some of them might resonate with my I said, and this is why it's so nice to have conversations with different educators, specifically different male educators as well, coming from all different sorts of backgrounds. And one of the things, speaking of job satisfaction, one of the things that you've shared in your article I found quite interesting. You've said that obviously, alongside the specific challenges that male educators experience, obviously we have a lot to juggle, like, for example, being safeguarders or learning about the statutory framework, or managing behaviors, learning from colleagues. Is there like any of these things that has made you, as an educator or even as a male educator, the most um, inspired and has had the most impact in your job satisfaction? Is there anything specific that you enjoy doing the most, let's say, amongst the things that you've mentioned in the article?
I like to think that probably my greatest feeling of satisfaction comes from, as I say, as I sort of mentioned, there's lots and lots of different strings to the bow, and that's probably the thing that, as an individual, excites me the most about early years. I think one similarity between hospitality and early years education that has run the line through my life, and I know a lot of people like this, and they work in early years, is we need a lot of variety within our working life. We need different challenges. You will hear the phrase, and I've heard it in both sides of the industry, firefighting quite a lot, which means that something needs your attention here, 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 here. And, you have to be quite dynamic in your movement. You have to have the ability to park something, even though you would like to attend it for a little while, and then revisit that. It might be later that day, it might be days, it might be weeks later, because certain needs will always be more urgent. And that's certainly more true in early years than it was in hospitality, but I think it has some truth in both. I think those roles that I think a lot of people in the modern working world inhabit, where they are doing, important work, difficult work, certainly, but quite regimented in terms of you might come and sit down in front of a computer in the morning and have a fairly regimented idea of what your day is going to look like, what your daily, weekly, monthly goals and targets are. I think in this industry, they flex and move around so much more. Now, to me and to people like me, and I've met a lot of them in this sense, that is the most exciting aspect of it because it feels like a very interesting challenge. I don't know what my day is going to look like when I get in. I will have plans, certainly, plans for activities that I want to do, plans for boards that I want to make, for training that I want to offer. But I need to be prepared that that day can go in 100 different directions based on 100 different things. Certain children aren't in, or other members of staff aren't in for that day. Okay, the plans need to change. the children take a discussion in a direction that interests you. Okay, the plans need to change. We need a visitation today. I have a discussion with a parent that goes off in a direction that requires my attention. Plans are always changing. So, in terms of that personal satisfaction, I know from my perspective, where it gets me the most is when I've had those very dynamic days with unexpected challenges, with unexpected conversations, and I can come away from them feeling like, okay, I've met up to a lot of those challenges. Less so that I completed the plan that I had stuck on the wall for the day. That went out the window by 9 a.m. That's fine. That doesn't bother me. But if I can come away from the day feeling like, okay, what happened along the way, I was meeting those challenges, then I feel like that is quite a big win. I think within that, to look at a specific as well, a big important part of what we do and what we are certainly taught about as well is working in partnership with parents. I think those partnerships are really, really important because a strength, a positive and a challenge with working with early years children is you will get flashes of feedback from them about how your practice are doing that are the most like light up firework in your chest moments that you can ever experience when they smile, they really react to something that you're doing, and you were like, oh, that one was a win, that activity was a win, that discussion was a win. That even a personal care routine that I did with them that made them feel well provided for in that minute. Those are huge fireworks and they can help carry you through a day. But to be frank and to be honest about the situation as it is, where they're very special, that's not constant. You're not getting constant positive reinforcement from children. They are simply relaying to you their needs, and a lot of their needs are brief and ever changing. So you solve one problem and nine have already arisen. So I think working in partnership with parents can help you stand back from the very immediacy of the problem solving in your days and begin to see a developmental journey over a time. I think when I first started, as much as I've described positive experiences and they were there, I talked a lot about working with colleagues. That was really helping me. I don't think I had any sense for my first 6 months of whether I and my practice was having a true developmental impact on the children. It's like a haircut, day to day, you don't see it growing. It's only after 6 months when you look at a side by side photo and go, oh, wow, no, look, very different. And I think the more I got to know parents, talked about them, learnt more about the children's lives at home, and they could see those changes and were talking to me about, actually, my child has learnt to ride a bike in this time, has gone from very basic early mark making to writing their first letter, to writing their name for the first time. My child has learned to walk in this time, has overcome these barriers. And where you talk about what you are doing and your end to support them, working in partnership with what they are doing in their home life to support them, I think then you can both stand back and say, actually, these things have really helped benefit that education. That is less the immediate burst of firework, but that's that sort of the steady glow of satisfaction of actually, okay, now with the longer term, I can see the differences that are being made. And that's where I feel that my work has an impact. And that was something I probably thought about, but didn't really consider in the career change, but something that has helped solidify my love for this and why I see my future going forward in this is that's a real sort of long-term feeling of satisfaction, even though, the children you're with might not be with you forever. They'll transition out of the room, transition onto school. You can see in the time that they have been in there a difference that you have helped make that can affect the rest of their lives. Because, what we do now in these early years settings is so much of a building block for the people they can become, for the potential they can have. You're a small piece of it, but an important piece of it. Even if in 5 years, in 1 year, in 6 months, they're not going to remember your name, you will know that you helped put a piece of that into the tapestry that makes them. And I find that is an incredibly rewarding thing. So even if you get a day where you don't get those little moments of satisfaction or don't feel like you ticked everything off, that is the thing that I can lean back and go, okay, let's remember Child X from last year, how far they got. We didn't get wins every day, but over the course, what a win.
That is so important, so important. And you've mentioned quite a lot of nice things about partnership with parents, which instantly made me think of a question like, how was your partnership with parents at your setting as a male educator? Obviously, this is something that I always love to ask fellow male educators out there, because obviously, there's still a lot of misconceptions and stigma around us working around young children. So I was very genuinely curious to know how your experience has been, and if you've had any challenges yourself with in the way you were interacting with parents, or has it been a smooth ride for you? How's it
I
been?
think for me as an individual, I have seen and been around difficulties that other people have had, and I've been warned of difficulties and challenges. And whilst I've experienced some very initially, I don't feel actually that I've had a huge amount of hold up from parents because of my role as a man. I can see it initially, absolutely. I think at the very, very beginning, when parents first come to meet you, your first days in the room, your first weeks in the room, things like that. Of the three nurseries I've worked with, two of them, I was the only man working in the building on my first day. So when I'm, first learning and getting to know the parents, first weeks and months in the job, I was the sole male practitioner in the building. And in the one where I wasn't, I was one of three staff out of, I think probably around 30, 35 odd staff in that building. So, you're always aware that you're in a marginalized percentage. And I think even from the beginning, I didn't I think something that's changed, I would definitely say, from taking on my first role, where everything was new, to coming into the most recent nursery I've been in and the role of room leader. When I first came in, I wanted discussion around my practice to be quite free of gender. I didn't want it to negatively affect me, nor did I want to make it a crutch, nor did I want to make it a benefit. I think my attitude coming in was simply, I'm here to be an early years educator. I'm here to be trained up. I think I was quite reliant. I'm sure many people have done this on, oh, it's my first day. Oh, it's my first week. Be patient with me. I've got a lot to learn. I've got the right attitude. I'm here to help. Um, it's lovely to meet you. It's lovely to meet your child. We've had some great interactions this week. I'm not going to talk to you about more than I know right now. I don't want to extend past the limits of my knowledge, of my experience. And where I had a few interactions where parents would be quite surprised that a man was in the industry. I had quite a few people ask me what drew me to the industry, as though it was a surprise. And whilst I never had it addressed directly, I've had a few parents over the years make assumptions about my sexuality because I was a man in early years. I think there is a not entirely prevalent, but certainly an existing stereotype within nursery groups that men who are attracted to early years will probably tend to skew homosexual in their sexual tendencies. Um, it's not particularly been my experience. I think it's more of a stereotype. I think it attracts all sorts. I think it's far more a personality type, much less to do with sexuality, for both genders. But I heard scuttlebutt of these things, implications maybe, but I can't say that I have had myself then or now a very specifically negative interaction. I know people that have had, and coming into my most recent nursery, I was warned of a couple of difficult and challenging stories that had happened within that setting within the last 6 months with parents that were no longer there, but parents that had been there, of parents saying they weren't comfortable with men offering physical care. They didn't want that, and even that they believed that men working with their children could potentially affect their child's sexuality going forward. Ludicrous idea, absolutely ludicrous, based on, I think, quite difficult to pin down stereotypes. I think another one I had quite early on was the manager of my building. I started in a preschool. Would say I was fine to cover toddler floor, but she didn't want me covering babies because she believed that men weren't maternal in that way. Again, broad stroke stereotypes that I don't believe have a grounding in reality anyway, but ones that are quite hard to pin down. Maternal is quite an abstract concept in that sense. So, like with all, I think, bad stereotypes and prejudices in reality, people don't exactly know a core of the root of what it is that they're worried about. They just have a sense of unease around something that they perceive as different to the norm. And people, far more marginalized groups than men in early years, have been combating prejudice over the course of human history. And it is about overcoming those attitudes that different is inherently means worse or threatening, in any sense of the way. Different simply means new. So, as I say, to bring this a little bit full circle, in the beginning, in my first role, I just didn't want gender to be something that I talked about. It could be the elephant in the room. In this latest role that I have come into here now, and I think I absolutely want to give a shout out to yourself, and other voices in early childhood, supportive groups and things like that, that have helped me reflect on myself and my role a lot more and be further down the line. Now it is something that I want to utilize as a strength within my role. It is not just I am different, but we don't need to talk about it. Is yes, I have a difference to some of the other practitioners that we may be used to, but let's look at the strengths that I can bring into the role of childhood development because of my masculinity. The preschool that I work in now has quite a few, I think 5 or 6 children with additional needs. All of them are boys. We're quite boy heavy in that room. And a couple of them are more specific conditions, autism, Asperger's, but we also have quite a few children who are simply on behavior plans because they show difficult and challenging behaviors, for reasons that are still being sort of looked into. um, and here, forging those partnerships with those parents, making those relationships, I came in and I was more sort of able to say, as a male in early years, I can potentially offer a different kind of role model. I am still bound to the same legislative and ethical and moral practices that everybody else within the industry is. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet in that sense. But differences are always there to be observed and then to be understood. We're role modeling how differences are our strengths to children. I want to be doing that within the industry as a whole as well. I want to be doing that for my colleagues, for parents, for everybody that turns their eye to early years and see who are the people helping develop children. I want to stand up within that and say, I am one of those people, because I'm good at my job, but also I am a male within that industry trying to make that difference by inhabiting that space, by saying, we have unique strengths that we can bring. Maybe some of the boys at that age might connect a little bit better or a little bit different to us. Maybe we can manage behaviors in a different way, simply through a tone of voice, simply through a shared experience, simply through a shared, physicality in a way that, we can talk about experiences we had when we were younger, growing up. I looked a bit like that too. I had that problem too, and give other boys and girls as well, something different, something that can be supportive. There's a little girl that I work with now as well who has she's got same-sex parents. She has two mums in the house. Incredibly sweet girl, really, really intelligent, bright, just fantastic, well-developed, well-rounded young girl. But one of the issues that her parents had talked about was that she was developing a prejudice around boys. Very early on, you don't really talk about 3 and 4 year olds in terms of prejudices, but that she would say things like, this is the girls' house, the boys don't come in the girls' house, and things like that. And that was because she hadn't necessarily had that male role modeling in her life to say, well, actually, we might play in slightly different ways. Some of it might be slightly more physical and rough and tumble, things like that. But there's a wealth of different ideas, different vocabulary, different games that we can bring and integrate. So I was able to do some role modeling for her. We forged a positive relationship, and those sort of phrases have fallen out of her dynamic. That, I think, is a great example of where standing up and being a guy in early years can make a positive difference.
Absolutely, Matty. Like, I couldn't be any more inspired by this conversation right now. And, sometimes it's just even our presence alone, regardless of the quality of our practice, that can help tackle those gender stereotypes. I came across a really interesting piece of research that said that gender stereotypes start forming at the age of 2 to 3 year olds in children, and they're fully formed by the age of 6, 7. So, to me, that's like your example from right now. Like, it's inspiring and needs to be shouted out about more, because you've practically demonstrated that a gender balanced teaching workforce can have a massive impact on tackling those stereotypes head on early on. Um, it- I'm speechless, honestly. That was such a great story. So, considering everything we've discussed and the challenges and the aspects that promote job satisfactions, um, if you were to come up with a piece of advice or a few solutions for those male educators out there, to sort of like not only overcome challenges but also engage in self-reflection and sort of finding their own path in the industry, what would you tell them? Is there anything that you'd like to share with them?
Sure, absolutely. I think, again, sort of personal to my own experiences, both with early years and coming through my own journeys in mental health, as many of us do. You have your good times and your bad times, your struggles in self-reflection and your victories. Um, I think for me, I can find it quite hard initially at the beginning of a journey of reflection within myself, a journey within a new industry, to sort of reflect, that this can be, a real positive for me as an individual. I can sometimes feel a bit of a disconnect between what I want for myself and the journey ahead of me, and say, oh, is this right for me? Is this journey going to be too challenging for me and things like that? I think self-reflection in those ways can be a bit cloudy at times. You Me myself, I often find it easier to talk to other people than perhaps talk to myself. I think what helped me a great deal coming into early years, and the piece of advice that I would want to give is, I started the journey by looking at what help I could offer other people. I think that was what brought more than, a reference from a friend who, could get me an interview and any interview would do. There's a truth to that. But when I'd had the interview, had the job offer, and had to sit at home and think, what would this journey look like? I think we'd like to believe that it's very easy for us to see all of the personal growth and development that's potentially can be unlocked in there and think about it in those terms. And that's a wonderful aspiration to have. But I think it's a very challenging one. I think a potentially easier, not better, but easier route in was to say, I can make a difference in other people's lives here. I'd worked in a service industry, and I would continue to want to give service to people because I like people. I like that I like being in a human industry. And that felt easier for me than self-love, was to give that love and support and care and use my skills and tools to help other people. So that was my route in. Along the way through early years, I've been able to do a lot of self-reflection and work on myself and find myself in much more positive headspaces, be able to reflect on not only my practice within early years, but myself as a person. And that if I have that ability to make those positive differences that can help, it's very corny to say shape future generations. It's that kind of speak we love to use that, but can sometimes make people go, well, come on, how much are you actually doing? Little differences, 3 little wins in a day, 3 little moments that you've given someone that they can feel really good about. The more I was able to do that and give that away and feel that I was making a difference with other people, the more then I was able to start tackling myself and say, okay, I'm doing a lot of self-reflection here where I'm making that good and positive difference with other people. I can start to be the change that I want to see, not just for them, but within myself. So it comes along the way. So I think to make it, I'm not great at doing summative statements. I'm more of a weaver and winder arounder. But I think what I would make the piece of advice is, if you start out saying, I will make positive change in other people's lives, and I think that's a really worthy and great idea to get into early years to do that. I think that is a uniquely fantastic area of work, a career, a place in life to do that, to make a positive change for other people that's tactile, that's manageable, that doesn't have the shadow looming over it of 6 years of study that you probably should have done earlier, or a pathway that is best started at 14 but you weren't sure what you wanted to do, or you're afraid to retrain because you don't know where your skill set will be relevant. Early years is a great place that you can come in from the beginning, just wanting to make a difference, train up from the start. If you can get in on the ground floor because you wanted to help someone else, you'd be amazed how along the way you'll end up helping yourself as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your encouraging words, Mattie. They're really inspiring, and I'm sure they'll be useful to the broad amount of listeners and viewers that are watching this episode. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mattie. It's been a pleasure seeing you again, and hopefully I will engage in future endeavors with you. For those listeners and viewers who would love to read Mattie's article, they're more than welcome to access it on the Voice of Early Childhood website, and watch out for more episodes from our Men in Early Childhood series. They will be posted over the next few months on the Men in Early Childhood page on the Voice of Early Childhood website. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Mattie, for being here with us today. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye bye.